The lore of Warhammer 40K is through the perspective of humanity, and sometimes you wonder what a person would think when they encounter these Xeno creatures, and that's what we're going to get in today in a deep dive as we explore how terrifying Xeno races are, starting off with the Necrons. One of the most terrifying elements about the Necrons is just how ignorant humanity is about this ancient Xeno race. From the moment a human's foot lands on a planet's surface to the thousands of years it takes to colonize the world, the existence of a tomb world capable of unleashing an army of undying constructs goes completely unknown. Every living thing for the last 6 million years went to sleep completely oblivious of the horrors that lay beneath the ground. And the grim dark irony of the Necron invasion is that in the days leading up to the awakening of a tomb world, the techno-archaeologists of the Adeptus Mechanicus are overjoyed with excitement and hope for such a monumental discovery, when in reality they are unearthing the entire planet's doom. You could imagine the scene that plays out on every one of these worlds, as AdMech expeditions begin to excavate the ruins of a structure that predates humanity's dark age of technology, the entrance revealing inscriptions of xeno-hieroglyphs depicting humanoid figures with metallic features. Tech priests foolishly interpreting these findings as a sign of the Omnissiah's glory in his robotic form. As the exploration squad cautiously descends into the tomb, they are blown away by the vast underground chambers of black-hued stone that radiate nullifying energy. This is the mysterious Noctilith or Blackstone as we know it. They are the first to breathe in the ancient air, thick with an unsettling silence. It is only broken by the faint hum of ancient machinery. It is the first sounds of the canoptic constructs, the first line of defense of a tomb world. In the dim light of these enormous chambers, the squad of AdMech explorers uncover row upon row of dormant robotic entities. These machines, eerily resembling humanoids, yet devoid of any sign of flesh. You could imagine that the thrill and curiosity of such a finding is short-lived, as the techno-archaeologists are assaulted by swarms of canoptic scarabs, spiders, and wraiths. Panic sets in as the team scrambles to escape the tomb, but the relentless pursuit of the machines prove inescapable. The once silent tomb echoes with the screams of the doomed explorers as they get dismembered and deatomized one by one. The terrifying part is that the outside world remains blissfully unaware of the Necron activation protocols that have been triggered. In the days that follow the tragic event within the tomb, whispers of the unearthed horror begin to circulate within the upper echelons of Imperial society. However, the truth remains shrouded in secrecy, suppressed by the most powerful forces of the planetary governor. His fear, just like any highborn in Imperial society, would be the implication of widespread panic, which could lead to civil unrest, or even worse, the attention of the Inquisition. For anyone with knowledge of the techno-archaeologist, official data slates would report that the team went missing, their fate sealed within the enigmatic depths of some ancient quote-unquote cave. Unbeknownst to the Imperial world, this ignorance and miscalculation of the threat that the Necrons pose would allow the Tomb World to slowly extend their influence beyond the confines of their buried structure, taking their time while the entire dynasty slowly awakens. The Necron defense protocols would begin to infiltrate communication networks, manipulate data stores, and subtly influence key figures in Imperial noble society. Because let's remember, although the bulk of the Necrons are mindless servants operating on command protocols, they are still a part of the most technologically advanced Xeno society in all of the galaxy, and are led by the shadowy but highly intelligent Cryptex, Overlords, and Pharaons, who do not shy away from outsmarting and covertly dismantling any intelligent intruder from their land. And as weeks pass, signs of the Necrons' influence manifest in mysterious events and unexplained catastrophes all around the globe. Reports of advanced cyber attacks, sabotaged infrastructure, and untraceable manipulation spread like wildfire. And as the Necrons infiltrate the Imperial stagnant and archaic technological systems, their influence reaches critical mass. And finally, enormous manufactorum districts that fuel the Imperial war machine are turned on their creators, becoming weapons of mass destruction as sulfur depots and munition factories malfunction, erupting in massive explosions throughout hive cities, taking out entire planetary blocks. This is trillions and trillions of Imperial citizens dying while the Necrons still slumber. Even the systems of the Adeptus Mechanicus become conduits of the Necrons' malevolent will, feeding planetary defense, fake news, sowing disorder and confusion amongst the planetary defense force. With this initial assault on Imperial forces, we see the truly terrifying and unspoken truth about a Necron invasion, as humanity finds itself on the brink of annihilation, caught in a war waged not yet with conventional armies, but with an insidious enemy hidden within the very fabric of its civilization. Panic and desperation grips the planet as society crumbles into anarchy. Planetary governments fall, and the once mighty imperial world faces the prospect of extinction at the hands of an ancient and all-powerful Xeno race that still hides in its ancient tomb. The Necrons, driven by a twisted sense of this annihilation protocol, continue their relentless pursuit of the complete eradication of humanity from their ancient home, their intelligence evolving with every calculated move until they are ready to materialize in front of their new prey. As the dynasties march out onto the battlefield, they carve a path of pure destruction as the uncaring and morally absent Silver Warriors kill everything in their path. Even the children aren't spared from their fury. Within solar days, the once familiar hivescapes now lay in ruin, a chaotic scene of destruction that bore witness to the malevolent force that sought to annihilate humanity. If you were caught up in the wrath of the Necrons, your body would be flooded with a sense of fearful anxiety as you cautiously make your way through the debris-covered streets. In the distance, the rhythmic clanking of the metallic monstrosities reverberate, sending shivers down your spine. Seeking refuge in the shadows of a crumbling building that you once felt was part of your home, the cold and emotionless green lights that serve as the Necron scanners flicker in the distance, a haunting beacon of destruction and a reminder that the Emperor holds no power over these soulless metal monsters. As you cower in the darkness, the forms of mindless humanoid robots emerge from the smoke and debris, their metallic limbs moving with an unsettling grace. The twisted fusion of organic and mechanical components create a nightmarish silhouette against the backdrop of devastation. The warrior's expressionless stare pins you down, revealing nothing of the monstrous intelligence that drove it. It's terrifying to witness the Necron's relentless advance, each step echoing like a death toll in the desolate landscape. Your heart pounding in your chest, the fear grips you like a vice, feeling the weight of impending doom as the mindless machines close in, its gaze fixating on the last remaining trace of human presence. The air crackles with an otherworldly energy as the Necrons and their gauze weapons travel through real space, its green glow casting long, ominous shadows. Your breath caught in your throat as you realize the futility of hiding. The Necron sensors were finely tuned, its intelligence far surpassing anything you could ever comprehend. In the chilling moment, right before the inevitable extermination, you feel the true terror of facing an entity devoid of empathy and mercy. The mindless humanoid construct is a harbinger of destruction, a relentless force driven by the insatiable desire to eradicate humanity. The thought of being hunted by a creature that lacks any shred of humanity's moral constraints has to be a nightmare beyond comprehension. As the Necron's lifeless gaze locks onto your hiding place, time seems to slow. In the moments of pure terror, the stark realization sets in that the Necron race is the embodiment of relentless destruction. The last thing you could see is a warrior casting a long, foreboding shadow over the remnants of a world that had once belonged to humanity. It would be absolutely terrifying to encounter the Necrons on the battlefield or be invaded by them. But what about a faction like the Greenskins? How terrifying would it be to come face to face with an orc? Now this is a topic that is harder than you might think, because within the Warhammer 40K lore, the orcs are used as a comic relief most of the time. So even when you're talking about something that is absolutely terrifying, like the orcs' ability to survive decapitation, making them relentless predators that are impossible to fight off, it's presented in a way that's harmless to the enemy and humorous to the reader. Especially when the severed orc head is attached onto a body that already possesses a head, and now the two-headed abomination tries to kill itself after getting into an argument with itself. So although many of the things we're going to discuss in today's videos have elements of absurdity, at their core they are terrifying realities of the abilities and dangers of the greenskin race. To truly understand the terror an Imperial Guardsman must feel when coming face to face with an orc warrior, we should talk about the hulking monstrosity that is the orc boy. Orcs are over 6 feet tall and are wide enough to overshadow any of the Imperium standard human soldiers. Their frame is extremely muscular and solid, having arms so long and heavy they could kill a man with a simple swing.
The knuckles of an orc boy scrape the floor as they lumber around. Each one of his hands ends in taloned fingers capable of tearing the enemy's throat clean out. A heavy brow hides two blood-red eyes that are afire with the need to kill. Most orc boys have a constant angry look on their face. Add to that jagged fangs that jut from a heavy jaw, and you have a creature that looks more like a wild predator than a sentient spacefaring warrior. Fighting an orc in close combat is equivalent to defending yourself from a slightly smaller grizzly bear with a battle axe and a pistol. We've all heard of humans running into bears in the woods and then being horribly mauled by the creature, but now imagine a similar-sized foe who isn't scared of gunfire, has no intention of running away, and is hideously laughing as he dismembers your body one limb at a time. The scarier part is that when it comes to wild animals attacking humans, it's usually something that happens in an instant. The hiker or the explorer is unlucky enough to run into or get stalked by the predator. But when it comes to the orcs, these monsters announce themselves from miles away. So the poor guardsman recognizes his impending doom as it's charging down the battlefield. He witnesses the giant lumbering creature charging through dead bodies to butcher and maim whatever he considers the next prey. A soldier of the Imperium has to be extremely battle-hardened in order not to feel fear when locking gaze on the bloodthirsty red eyes of an orc. Scars and wound reminding the poor human that he doesn't stand a chance at killing this monster. Which brings me to another very terrifying reality about the greenskins. They aren't easily killed. Reports have circulated amongst the ranks of the Astra Militarum that tell of the relentless nature of the orc biology. A severed orc hand has the potential to drive its claws into a guardsman's body and kill the poor warrior even if it's been laying there for minutes. Burning of orc body parts is a requirement for most guardsmen, and because orc flesh is unassailed by infectious diseases, deadly bacteria grows on their skin and will enter the enemy's body during combat, infecting open wounds and causing horrific pain to whoever is unlucky enough to be wounded by an orc but not die right away. Orcs are also the invaders that will never go away. When an orc fleet arrives in orbit, the Planetary Defense Force understands that if they don't fight like hell to keep the greenskins off their world, the greenskin threat will never disappear. From the jungles of Armageddon and Catachan to the ash wastes of Gorka Morka, once the orcs have arrived, there is no kicking them out. The more you kill, the more they grow. Imperial savants all across the galaxy are baffled by the ability of the orcs to multiply exponentially in a simple matter of weeks. A small warband that acts as no more than a nuisance to a group of defenders will turn into a full-fledged army if left unchecked. Only exterminatus can wipe out the orcs fully from the face of a planet. So not only does the Imperial world get terrorized by the Xeno threat, but in the back of everyone's mind is the notion that if the Inquisition or if the Adeptus Administratum decides to, they can virus bomb the entire planet, killing every living thing on it. So put yourself in the shoes of a planetary governor. You have the two horrific options of suffering through a grueling war against the orcs for generations, or rather rip the band-aid off and kill everyone all at once and start off from scratch. And the greenskins are an alien species that has terrorized the galaxy for nearly 60 million years. The Eldar at the height of their empire couldn't fully destroy them, the Necrons during the War in Heaven chose not to fight them, even the Tyranids are having trouble dealing with the orcs in the current era. There is no faction within the galaxy that can fully destroy these monsters. But I would have to say that the scariest part about the orcs is their biological urge to kill. In a setting like 40K, this concept loses a lot of its terror, but let's stop and acknowledge the fact that all an orc does is think about killing. Everything they do, from odd boys like mechs creating weapons to runt herds raising aggressive and deadly squigs, all of their actions are in preparation to murder and slaughter their enemies. And orcs are never looking for a quick fight. Their weapons and war gear are almost purposefully designed to prolong the butchering process. Some may use sharp blades, but a blunt object is just as good for killing as any other choppa. It literally is a spacefaring race of serial killers who could not be negotiated with. Every one of their bargains comes with a significantly high chance of betrayal and backstabbing, and they find humor in all of this loss of life. They attach blades to spinning wheels of trucks and bikes just to watch their vehicles slice away the limbs of those unlucky enough to get too close. Even if it's their own comrades, the orcs enjoy death and mayhem for the sheer fun of it. Worst of all is when they capture or corner refugees. These scared women and children are of no use to the tougher orcs, but for all of the younger, less experienced orcs, groups of weak and defenseless people like this is a perfect chance to test out new shootas and choppas. The orcs descend on the innocent like a pack of rabid wolves, hacking away at the people a quarter of their size. Their deep, roaring laughter is only muffled by the screams of horror of the poor human civilians. Some orcs are even known to keep slaves simply so that they have something other than aggression to punch and torture.
Now let's take a look at a faction that without a doubt is one of the most terrifying in all of Warhammer 40k lore, the Tyranids. But not the Tyranids as a whole. In order to understand the true human perspective of what it's like to face the Tyranids, let's look at the Dagon Overlord.
What makes this Hive Tyrant so unique is that it's been able to distinguish itself from the swarm of Hive Fleet Dagon, and both Imperial and Xeno forces have come to recognize this creature as a sort of ever-present Tyranid leader. The first recorded sighting of the Tyranid bioform that came to be known as the Dagon Overlord was during the opening days of the Battle of Castable, a hive world that was regarded as the jewel of the Orpheus salient in the Jericho Reach and one of the primary industrious hive worlds responsible for supplying a significant portion of troops and materials to the Imperial military might. This region of space was newly inducted back into the Imperial fold, and when Hive Fleet Dagon assaulted the sector, the Imperium understood that Castable could not fall. It had to be the planet that halted the Hive Fleet. The strongest defense was placed on Hive Trimalov. It was to be guarded at all cost, for it was the political heart of the planet and the center for the world's religious life. This hive city was renowned for its breathtaking cathedrals. They were immense gleaming edifices made out of marble and obsidian, housing 20 billion emperor-fearing worshippers. It was here that the Overlord appeared, leading a mighty swarm of Tyranids that battered the holy spires of the capital hive. The Dagon Overlord successfully breached the outer defenses, and his horde crawled through the walls, dispatching the defenders in a month-long orgy of carnage and slaughter. Like a true super predator, the Overlord did not care whether his horde assaulted soldiers or civilians. Every single living soul inside that hive city was devoured until it was devoid of any human life. Only a handful of Imperial soldiers and citizens were able to escape the fall of the hive city, and each one of them brought back the traumatizing tale of the invasion. But most terrorizing of all was the memory of the Overlord, which stood apart from even the worst horrors that the swarm had to offer. Etched into the minds of the survivors was the brooding and savage form of the Dagon Overlord. Sadly, one of the guardsmen's accounts of his encounter with the Dagon Overlord was somehow made public and has spread throughout the rank and file of the Imperial Guard in the region. It has become a terrifying tale that is read under the cover of night and away from commissars. It reads, "Then suddenly I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the monster slid into view above the cathedral ruins. Vast, loathsome, and almost godlike, it darted like a stupendous creature of nightmares to the spire, above which it flung its gigantic, scaly arms, and while it bowed its hideous head, it gave a vent to the most terrifying sound. I truly think I went mad then. It is reported that sadly the guardsman then took his own life." Covered in slimy plates of chitin which constantly drip and leak fluid, the Overlord projects an aura of horror and menace like nothing else within the swarm. Its importance and power are also readily apparent when it strides alongside other Tyranid creatures. Peering into the demonic eyes of this Overlord, one can perceive a personal desire to murder, maim, and kill. It's almost as if the Hive Fleet was able to dig into the minds of the trillions of human souls it had consumed and create a creature with a stare that struck at the primal fear of humanity. Many xenobiologists and inquisitors with knowledge of the Overlord seem to agree that it is a unique hive tyrant evolved as a specific tool for the eradication of mankind. What it does to its victims is not a simple act of consumption like the other Tyranid creatures. The Dagon Overlord seems to intentionally slow down the killing process to generate as much fear and panic amongst his enemies, committing acts like impaling living victims into capillary towers and spitting enough acid onto the enemy to horrifically disfigure and then allowing them to retreat. All of these are heinous acts that are uncharacteristic of Tyranid bioforms who simply want to destroy and consume. Since its first appearance, the Dagon Overlord has been sighted in almost all of the major combat zones of the Orpheus salient, leading swarm after swarm into the ranks of the Imperial defenders. This has led many to believe that the Overlord is not a unique creature at all, but instead represents a new bioform of Tyranid. However, whether it is a unique entity or not, it's hard to determine when dealing with the hive mind, as it is constantly recycling its own troops. This means that the Overlord may be a single veteran of many wars, and may have even fallen countless times to the foe, only to be respawned by the hive mind over and over again. What makes this fact scarier is the cults that are forming all across the Jericho Reach and other sectors around this Tyranid figure. Because he is a fixed part of the Hive Fleet and in essence can never be defeated, he has become the embodiment of the entire Hive Fleet as a whole. These Xeno worshipper cults fixate on the stories of the Overlord and claim that he is the one true god and the true face of the Great Devourer. Without a doubt, Genestealer cults are responsible for spreading the faith of the Dagon Overlord.
And the final faction that we're going to talk about is the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari. How terrifying would it be to be captured by one of these creatures and then brought back to Kamara to be a slave in the warrior pits?
Life as a warrior in the blood-soaked arenas of the Dark Eldar city of Kamara is more akin to the life of a slave than a veteran combatant. Hundreds of these battle pits exist all throughout the city, and each hellhole is well stocked with thousands of miserable fighters from all over the galaxy. Captured and tortured during a real space raid, almost every fighter has experienced the true evil nature of the Dark Eldar, and as sinful as these Xenos are, the city they bring their slaves to is just as depraved and tormented as the Drukhari. Once in Kamara, a group of slaves will be bought, sold, stolen, and tortured many times over before becoming property of the Dark Eldar witch cults. The witch cults are a band of skilled Drukhari killers that provide their kin with a feast of bloody torture. Torture that, for a while at least, keeps the citizens of the Dark City from cutting one another's throats. Nightly battles between the gladiatrixes of the witch cults and the slave warriors in their possession draw cheering crowds to every Kamarite arena. Each horrific performance allows the citizens of High Kamara to feed upon the acts of lustful murder and killing, refined to the level of an art form. These massive arenas are built into the citadels of the Dark Eldar witch cults, and while only exposed to the fighting pits and the housing cells, every slave combatant is forced to cope with the twisted geometries of the webway. For some, merely attempting to settle in on such a strange environment is enough to drive them mad. Fighters are kept locked up in shadowy cells designed to cause as much pain and suffering as the battle pits themselves. Each small chamber is home to one or two captives, the cramped living conditions, another form of torture imposed by the Drukhari. If lucky, the cellmate of a fighter will be a sane individual. If not, the slave warrior will have to manage with another potential threat. Aggressive orc cellmates might attempt to bash their fellow bunkmate's head into the wall, just out of sheer rage. Mentally unstable Kroot warriors might attempt to eat their cellmates alive, or brutally cunning humans might attempt to slit their cellmate's throat during the night to reduce competition. For many warrior prisoners, the notion of a Xeno race is a completely new concept, and the appearance of an alien life form sharing a living space is terrifying. To these ignorant captives, the Xeno cellmates are demons from hell. For a few of them, this is not far from the truth, as the Dark Eldar do not discriminate on whom they capture, whether they are from real space or the warp. All the while, the agonizing screams of tortured souls persist through the housing cells. Every few minutes, another poor slave relinquishes their sanity and begins to shriek in pain. This is the ultimate goal of the Dark City, to slowly tear apart rather than obliterate, to maim and not kill, for the Dark Eldar of the witch cults feed upon the misery of their captured warriors. Those that manage to survive in such a horrific environment and still maintain their composure are truly fierce individuals. Imperial Guard veterans captured during a Dark Eldar attack, Pharaoh world inhabitants accustomed to harsh environments, or superhuman warriors of the mighty Adeptus Astartes. These warriors have a long and torturous road ahead of them. Each witch cult has its own arena, which is as much a display of their wealth and status amongst their kind as it is a stage for their spectacles of violence. Each cult's arena is unique, each performance more violent and outlandish than the last, for these gladiatorial sisterhoods are locked in a constant competition to offer up the greatest show for their hungry-eyed audience. These multi-level structures are clustered with barbed stages upon which thousands of warrior slaves meet a gruesome end. The arena's spectators observe from ornate thrones or from anti-gravitic pleasure crafts, drinking in the pain from a thrillingly unsafe distance. And each arena is an architectural masterpiece in its own right. The engineering marvels able to be performed cannot be compared to anything in real space. The unnatural dimensions of the webway, coupled with the ancient knowledge of the Drukhari, creates combat stages that appear like interdimensional labyrinths to the slave warriors. Each arena has its own deadly charms and challenges. Some arenas specialize in deadly obstacle courses, where some of the most agile and athletic warriors from all over the galaxy are summoned to traverse a series of traps, such as spinning blades, flaming high walls, barbed wire crawls, gravitic wells, kinetic inversion snares, or even more esoteric and inventive hazards. Other arenas specialize in capturing some of the most aggressive and deadly beasts found in the galaxy, and watch them wreak havoc amongst gladiators. Great Narlocs, Carnifexes, Chaos Spawns, and even beasts never before seen by the Imperium have made their way into these arenas. Creatures capable of decapitating heads with a swipe of an arm, or beasts so massive they could crush entire groups of warriors with one fell stomp. Each witch cult is constantly in competition to outdo its rivals with the sheer scope and imagination of its gore-soaked games. Many performances spread into the audience in interesting and deadly ways as the excitement builds up to a fever pitch. Arterial spurts of blood rain down into the audience as battles take place over their heads or even amidst their stalls. The arenas crackle with tension, the viewers leaning forward in their seats with eyes wide and the look of hungry predators etched upon their faces. Be they aerial ballots of bloodletting, zero-gravity mass murders, or carefully selected menageries on the prowl. All cult performances have one thing in common. The arena is slick with blood and gore by the end of each night. For the miserable warrior performers, each night survived starts to become a punishment rather than a blessing. Pain and suffering is a reoccurring theme every night. Many warriors are cut open just deep enough to spill blood and feel agony, but never to die. Other warriors are left barely breathing, only to be given just enough medical attention as to stay alive. If a warrior is truly on his last leg, drugs and other chemicals will be injected into the dying fighter, and he will be the first combatant out the next day. For those that lose limbs, the Drukhari will perform the most barbaric acts of surgery to make the fighters deadly enough to appease their audience. The pain shown by a warrior that has the ability to win, but is crushed or sliced to pieces, is much more savory than watching a living punching bag. Those whose minds succumb to the torturous sport and go insane are still utilized in creative ways by the witch cults. Massive blades are attached to the limbs of madmen and sent out into the arena to kill their former companions. Mutagenic and radioactive scraps are grafted onto the bodies of warriors that have given up, and slowly their skin begins to bubble and their minds contort, turning them into aggressive and disgusting abominations of their former selves. And then there are those that are simply used as target practice before a show. For all those warriors that have witnessed the atrocities of the arena, survival is their number one priority. What they assume to be knights are spent fashioning weapons from what they have around them, daggers and shanks that can be concealed and used as last-ditch weapons, pouches of dust and scraps to throw in the eyes of an opponent. Even chemicals that seep into their cells are stored in the hopes of them being forms of acid or poison. There will always be those warriors that attempt to escape, and surprisingly enough, escape is a very easy thing to do. The unfortunate reality is that outside the arena of the witch cults are the streets of Kamara. On the streets, escapees will become prey to bands of Dark Eldar that prowl the streets. Homunculi will experiment on anyone who wanders too close. Quartets of Helions armed with Hellglaives will slice anyone in their path. Being alone on Kamara is much more dangerous than the arena. For those that choose to stay and test their luck in the arena, cooperation and luck is their only hope for survival. Bands of slave warriors will look out for each other as much as they can. Former Imperial guardsmen will fight alongside Tau Fire warriors. Captured and shamed Eldar will aid Chaos cultists. Even Imperial commissars will have to put aside their racial prejudices, because at the end of the day, they will only see themselves as veterans of the arena. The witch cults will more than likely always promote these groups, as they will prove more of a challenge and display a grander show for their bloodthirsty audience. Ultimately, each veteran will come to understand that whatever tactic they choose to employ, It won't be a matter of survival to get away from the arena, but survival to fight again. And finally, the appearance of a witch in the arena spells doom for any slave gladiator. These deadly Drukhari are masters at their craft. They enter combat dressed with as much aesthetic care as if they were to meet a lover, wearing the bladed black armor of the arena over one side of an impeccably elegant and skin-tight bodysuit known as a witch suit. The other side has sections deliberately cut away to expose their pale flesh, as if to tempt death himself. The witches also use a variety of combat drugs distilled by the homunculi covens to increase their already superhuman dexterity. When outnumbered in combat, witches will roll, backflip, and pirouette out of the way of the foe, stabbing their blades into any vulnerable point on their enemies' bodies, slitting throats and gouging out eyes as they go. They flow like water around their foe's attempt to land a blow, their expressions of aloof arrogance melting into infuriating smiles of superiority as they drink each fresh scream of agony.
Now, those are just a few stories of how terrifying it would be to encounter Xenos in the 40k world. Comment down below, let me know if you guys want me to do a part 2 and what factions I should focus on. If you guys are enjoying these deep dives, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, comment down in the comment section below. Engagement really helps out the channel and it gives more Warhammer 40k content for you. Thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Oh, what a beautiful